Shalom.
So on, bro. Spirit, I was just thinking about you, bro.
How about you?
So on. How about you? You sit right here, bro. Go ahead. You just got off work. You can sit my seat too. Go ahead, bro. 28.
Man, Q Dizzle. We're going over Ezekiel 28.
Ezekiel 28. This is my soul right here because I got to work after this. So.
Okay.
You got to go to work tonight?
Yeah. Oh, so you got to work tonight? I thought you just got off of work.
Nah, I got off in the morning, like around 5, 7. Got to the house around 6:30.
Oh, you took it. I'm guessing you just went to sleep for a little bit. Yeah. You got to go back tonight?
Okay. 7 days.
What time you got to go to bed?
I'm going to head out like around 7.
Okay.
We got to unlock a lounge for it. It's a car so I can finish that wallpaper.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we can go ahead and get started on Ezekiel 28.
Con, I got it right here if you want to read.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll read. All right, so this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 28, starting at the top, okay? And it reads, "The word of the Lord came again unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus,
The water, my G.
Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am God. I sit in the seat of the Most High, in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man and not God, though thou set thine heart as the heart of God."
Right. So this is Ezekiel speaking to the king of Tyrus. Now, this is just a question if anybody knows. If not, it's all good. Anybody know who the king of Tyrus was at this time?
Not by name.
All right. Well, the king of Tyrus at this time was King Ethbaal the Third, or you can pronounce it King Ithobal the Third.
Hold on real quick.
Okay.
Ezekiel speaking to King of Tyrus. I'm just like scribing everything when we do class now.
No, that's all good. Yeah, so he was speaking to the Prince of Tyrus, which Prince King, same difference. Now, also,
What's his name?
King Ethbaal, Ethbaal the Third.
What's that mean? I know Baal means confusion.
I'm not sure what Ethbaal means. I know Lord is in there.
Yeah, Lord. Baal is Lord too. Baal is Lord too. Lord of confusion.
What y'all talking about?
Y'all watching my
We're going into Ezekiel 28. We're going over verses 1 and 2 right
You
now.
want to sit down?
Huh?
You want to sit down here?
No. I'll grab a seat.
But the king's name at that time was Ethbaal the Third. All right. Now, when you read that verse, it says, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am God, and I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas. Yet thou art a man, and not the Most High, though thou set thine heart as the heart of the Most High." What scripture can you guys think of?
Well, Isaiah
47.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Isaiah 47 as well. So let's go ahead and get those.
What's that other one? I know Isaiah 47.
Isaiah 14. You can get Isaiah 14.
Oh yeah. It's
Start
another
at verse. Start at verse 13.
Yeah, this is a parallel chapter to Isaiah 14, pretty much to a degree.
Yep.
That was the king of Babylon in Isaiah 14, right?
Yeah.
Which that's how you link it up spiritually.
Right.
This is how you know that this prophecy here is talking about the king of Babylon, because the king of Tyre
Right.
pretty much had the same mindset of the king of Babylon.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
In the
Right.
same way spiritually.
That's right.
You can go to Isaiah 23 and 1.
Get it.
All right.
So you read Isaiah chapter 14 and start at verse 12.
This is Isaiah 14 and 12. "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer?" Salaki. "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?"
Right, so the Shabbat, what's the word Lucifer mean?
Light bearer.
Light bearer, right? And how do you say it in Hebrew?
I don't know.
Hayalav.
How you love?
Hayalav. Lucifer. Light bearer, son of the morning. The enlightened ones. This is how you know this is talking about the rulers of this day and age, as we know, is to be the Rockefellers, the elites, the Rothschilds, these elite banking families. They're considered to be Luciferians, which they're really light bearers. Now,
Illuminati.
would you consider yourself to be Lucifer?
Because we are the light of the world.
Right, exactly. Yahweh Shai is a Luciferian.
Yeah.
He's the top Luciferian.
Exactly.
He's the morning star.
Exactly.
You know, and he has the light. He is the light too.
Yep.
You know,
And we come in that order. That's why that whole Masonic order, they get everything from the scriptures, man.
Yep.
You know, that's why you have levels and shit. You know.
yeah.
That's why you got the like you said, Messiah order, then you got the Masonic order. Like it's
They
crazy.
talking about temple building because Mason is a builder.
Yep.
And then who was like the like one of the people who was known for like a great or exquisite building?
Stonemason. Oh, you talking about Solomon in general? Yeah.
Solomon's temple.
Yeah.
They used that blueprint
Right.
within their order and their principles and ideals and shit.
Yeah, Hiram
Exactly.
Abiff.
And who was Hiram? Where did he come from?
He was a king of Tyrus.
Tyree.
Yeah.
Damn.
You see what I'm saying? The Tyrus,
Damn.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
crazy.
We got Isaiah.
Let's finish this up first, and then we'll go around with the precept.
This is Isaiah 14:12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?
Right. So this is talking about Esau. All right. Esau is being cut down. He's going to be cut down
Right.
and be weaker than these different nations. You see what I'm saying? And this is the time frame that we're in right now, where his kingdom is falling.
Yeah, that's right.
See?
Salakia.
You know, okay.
Yeah, Tyrus became haughty over time. You know, because there was a point in time where we had that brotherly covenant that it still went on from David and Hiram.
Yep.
Carried on with Solomon and Hiram.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, you even read it in Amos, I believe, the second chapter, first or second,
It's the first chapter.
where it goes into the 3 transgressions of Tyrus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They became haughty and they came against us. And this is still a reflection of that. You know what I'm saying? We didn't join league with them again afterward.
Yeah.
You know
That's
what I'm
when
saying?
all the Lord started casting their judgment on all the nations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. Because them Tyranians, man, they're Hamites too.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times when you read, like in particular this chapter, this is going into the fall of the king of Babylon. But then again, too, in certain other prophecies, like in Amos the first chapter, and Zephaniah the second chapter, when it talks about the destruction of Tyrus and Tyre, it's really going into the Hamites too.
Yeah.
Man,
You know?
I'm thinking too. I know this is because Jay can go on tangents, but that word like tyranny, or you said tyrannical, like a tyrannical rule,
Tyrant.
that may come back from them. Just basically that pride just being etched so deep.
It could.
It could be, but
Possibility.
it's far fetched. But I'm just thinking because it all makes sense.
Con. I see what you're doing, man.
But anyway,
Go ahead.
This is Isaiah 14:13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High.
He said, "I will ascend unto heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High." Now that could be twofold too,
and that's what I'm just saying. Like a tyrannical rule. Like
Yeah.
man,
because the stars, he's physically trying to
Right,
exalt his
right.
throne above the stars by his international space stations. You know, trying to go out to the heavens and search out the heavens and search out how big space is and how space curves, and we know that this planet's over here, and you know what I'm saying. But then again, too, the stars also too are the Israelites.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So he wants to exalt his throne above the stars of heaven by what? Go ahead.
I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north.
I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. What does that mean?
Can you read that, Mother?
Con. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north.
It's just you know, it's just a guess. If you know, it says, "I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north."
Future prophecy for America?
Not necessarily. If the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north is him in the land of Israel today.
Okay.
You go to Psalms 48 and 2 real quick. Another brother can go there. You know, I know Sha'ar's holding Isaiah.
So Psalms
Psalm 48 and 2.
48 and 2?
Mm-hmm.
Psalms chapter 48, verse 2. It says, beautiful for situations of the joy of the whole earth is mounted. It is Mount Zion.
It's Mount Zion, right? Go ahead.
On the sides of the north.
On the sides of the north.
The city of the great king.
The city of the great king.
Where was that again?
This is Psalms 48 and 2.
So when he sets himself and he sits upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, he's sitting in the land of Israel today. That's why the scripture says that bastards shall dwell in Ashton.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And also, it also tells you too in Isaiah I want to say it's Isaiah the first chapter. Let me just look real fast. Isaiah the first chapter.
Where's everybody at?
Right now we're in Isaiah 14, verse 13.
Brothers.
Oh, everybody working.
And then I think Yatazar, he had to go pick up Kawhi.
Yeah.
And he's on his way. Mike Yala's working. Ariala will be here later. Yarala's working.
Mike Abbas apartment hunting.
Yeah, Benaya probably will be coming pretty soon.
Yeah, he waiting on his old lady.
Kathak, what's up with him?
He's on his way too.
And I don't know. My kid's in Mississippi.
And Shaquat working.
Shaquat working, yeah.
Let's just record it. No, you good. I just didn't want information to go out there while I was recording.
Con, I edited it out. It's cool.
But yeah, precepts of that. Isaiah 1:7. It says, "Your country is desolate. Your cities are burnt with fire. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence, and it is desolate as overthrown by strangers." See what I'm saying? And that goes into the Edomites that's in our land. That's in our land today, dwelling in the land of Israel. So he's exalting himself as he is God. He's exalting himself as if he is the children of the Heavenly Father. He paints his images like he's the angels. He paints his images like he's the ancient prophets and the ancient forefathers. That's why he's exalting himself like he is God. Like, for example, when you see the Sistine Chapel, the creation of man, you got Adam and the Heavenly Father, two Edomites touching fingers and that homosexual shit. Yeah, that's the creation of man image. You know, he's exalting himself above his above who he really is. What verse did you stop at in Isaiah?
That was verse 13.
Okay, can you read verse 14 too?
Con, I got a quick precept real quick. This is Baruch chapter 3. I'm going to go to straight to verse 19. It goes into our desolation. But it says, "They are vanished and gone down to the grave, and others are come up in their steads." You know, goes into our land, goes into those precepts I was brought up in Psalms 48 and Isaiah 14.
That's why the scripture says in Sirach, the 12th chapter, "Never trust thine enemy, as iron rusts the souls of wickedness." And pretty much roughly paraphrasing, it tells you to be careful and take good heed of him. At least he'll pretty much slay him. He'll stand up in your stead as the children of the Father.
Yep.
See?
That's right. Verse Isaiah 14 and 14. "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High."
I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. You know, that's why he wants to put a microchip in everybody.
Right.
You know, so he can have his eyes on everybody. He can control everybody. He can shut you down with the flip of a switch. He can make you hungry when he wants you to be hungry. He can make you think what he wants you to think, and your thoughts, they can be controlled. When he tries to implement his mark of the beast system, he's gonna really feel like he's the Most High, and he has the total power and the total package. You see what I'm saying?
Because they implementing that with how they can read that. They say they can pretty much just process a person's thoughts, so they trying to do that now. You know what I'm saying? And then another implication is that alert that went out from Trump now, just showing you how much power. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody gonna get this. You know what I'm saying? So that's more so like a declaration, like, nigga, you know what I'm saying? We know every move you make. Your history's tracked from your GPS, your text message, your banking, even with mail, because if you move, you used to have a change of mail address, and then they still contact you. Kind of had, you know what I'm saying? They got you. You know what I'm saying? And Esau's like that. Esau, in his mind, his eyes are 10,000 times brighter than the sun.
That's what makes him proud. That's why his pride is exalted above the heavens.
Yep, that's right.
But even too, actually,
What you need, bro?
Slack. That was it on Isaiah 14. Isaiah 47. Yep.
You want me to start in
Start at like verse 7.
verse 7? This is Isaiah 47, verse 7. "And thou saidest, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it."
Right. And that's the thing. Esau, he did all this wickedness, and he did all this iniquity in the world. He's sown iniquity into the earth. You know, he's still sowing iniquity into the earth, but the thing is, he's not remembering the latter end.
That's right.
You know, he's not remembering the latter end of the fact of the matter of that he's going to be complete. He's going to have to pay for all that he's done.
Yep.
It says that he's going to be a lady forever.
Yep.
You see? Go ahead.
Verse 8. Therefore, hear now this, thou that art given to pleasures that dwellest carelessly.
And that word given to pleasures that dwellest carelessly goes back to securely. That word delicately, I think it is, or carelessly. It goes into pretty much being secure. You see, in these Americans, they feel like they're secure in America. They feel like nothing bad can happen. They see bombs dropping in Iran and bombs dropping in Syria and Iraq and Yemen and things going on in these different nations around about. But they really feel like over here is maximum security, whereas nothing bad can happen. There's no bombs that can be dropped over here.
That's right.
They trust in their
There's a dome.
like an iron dome.
They trust in their pride.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's their shield. The weapon is the sword, and the policies and the philosophies, and their shield is their pride. You know, that's why the Edomite came up last night when we mentioned Christianity and murder in the same breath is one and the same to him.
Yeah.
You know, because it's the pride of being American. You know, being this Babylonian. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you know they don't think like a sensible person.
Yeah.
It's they literally fueled by a psychotic rage of blood.
That's right.
Bloodlust,
Yeah.
man.
He was very unapologetic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
We on top, we took it.
Yeah,
took
it's
it.
like a
It's
boxer
ours.
in a fight. You know, he put his hands down. You know, he walk up to you with his hands down. He don't care if you swing.
Yeah.
You know, because he believes that you can't touch him. You can't do nothing to him. I don't care. You can hit me with your hardest punch. I'm gonna walk through it and I'm gonna destroy you and devour you. That's the pride. That's the pride that the white man has. He doesn't care.
That's right.
You know.
Yep.
Right.
And this pride is going to destroy him at the end of the day.
It goes further into that.
Kind of.
I'm back in verse 8. Therefore, hear now this, thou that art given the pleasures, also like it, thou that art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and none else besides me.
Go ahead.
I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children.
Right, and these Edomites really believe that, man. They really believe that if anything was to happen, America will blow any nation out the frame in a war. Our missiles can be, our defense systems can protect us from anything. Our missiles can obliterate anybody. We're the strongest, the biggest, the proudest, the bravest nation. Army strong. It is what it is. You see what I'm saying? That's why these Edomites, when they walk up to us at the camps, that's where they come up with that pompous attitude. Like, oh, these guys talking about America falling. The hell these niggas talking about?
They don't even know what we talking about. They'll walk up and not hear a syllable of what we said. They just see a group of non-white, so-called self-proclaimed white people gathering together, and it gotta be against me. Gotta be against what I stand for, what I believe in. They just walk up talking shit. They have no clue what we said.
That's right.
No idea. But that's what's that's why I'm saying it's in their DNA. It's like it's bred in them to be against you and to think that you're lower. They're never gonna not think that. You know?
It's in them.
They don't care what your agenda is. They don't care what you're saying. Don't matter.
They've been,
You know?
they've been trained up that way. You know, train up a child and they shall go that way. So
That's the spirit that Yahweh Shem Yahushua put on Edomites.
that's right.
That's it.
You know? From the womb.
That's
We
right.
are strange from the womb.
Yeah. They come out speaking.
You know? It's never and that's what these people don't understand the spirit that's on Esau.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They don't get it. Look, the nigga wicked. Do you understand what wicked is? He is the definition of wicked. Pure wicked. He don't give a fuck about none of what he don't care about cleaning water and having clean air. That's don't waste my time. I don't want to hear that. But a sensible person will be like, yeah, we need clean water. You know, everybody should be able to eat. You know, no, you know, he didn't do it. You know, let him go. You know, he don't care about this shit. You know, he's the only nation that ever ruled really with that much ruthlessness and violence and decrepitness as a people.
That's right.
You know, and so it's not You can't have a conversation with Edomites, you know, and that's what people, they truly don't understand it.
So they're natural born devils, man. Anything that you tell them, like especially like last night was a pure example. Like when we were talking about Columbus Day. Oh yeah, definitely should. That's an Edomite, man. And the thing is, it's in them it's in them to love the fact that our people were destroyed. It's in them.
Uplift unrighteousness.
Yeah.
You know, that's why they, you know, just like Jesus the Word, all those guys.
I broke a thumb.
I definitely want to get back to the verse. I apologize, but that's what. Yeah, pork is good. You're missing out. You know, if you guys want down under the law, you're missing out on how delicious pork is. You know.
It should kill me.
But in the scriptures, it tell you how the Israelites would die before they would put pork to their lips. So what you're saying is Eleazar died in vain.
Yeah.
All of these Israelites died in vain. They should have just ate the pork.
Yeah. That's what basically what K-Dub and Jesus,
Yeah.
the Word was saying on that comment board last night. They said hand does go hard though, playing games.
Yeah.
But for those playing games, Baba Kashah, let me get to verse 9. This is back in Isaiah chapter 47.
So like, by the way, we're in Isaiah 28. I'm sorry, Ezekiel the 28th chapter. That's where class is over.
We're just bringing precepts out in regards to the first 2 verses so far.
This is back in Isaiah chapter 47, verse 9. But these 2 things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day. The loss of children and widowhood.
And what's that? That's going to be destruction, man.
That's right, judgment.
The loss of children and widowhood, man, because she said Babylon believes that this place is going to be a lady forever. You know, it feels like it's not going to have to take up the fact that you burned all these different nations out here and they ain't going to come against you and put you to death, man.
That's right.
You see?
Right.
That's going to come in a moment, in one day, man. Death and destruction on a mass level, man.
Right.
You know?
You know, scriptures mention those two different things, loss of children and widowhood. Why? Because in the ancient world, family was the most valuable thing you can have as a family. So the parent losing his child is probably one of the most devastating things that can happen to you. And then a woman losing her husband. You know, it's devastating.
On both ends.
Yeah, it's crippling. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's going to happen to the average American Edomite, because they don't believe those things should happen. You know?
Was there any more in there?
Oh yeah, come. They shall come upon thee in their perfection for the multitude of thy sorceries.
They shall come upon thee in their perfection, man. You see what I'm saying? This destruction is going to come upon America in its perfection. It's not going to be a slight judgment, and then a little sliver of Esau's power still just hanging on still a little bit. They're going to come out the rubble and just be good. No, like it's going to be the perfect destruction, man.
Right.
Whereas it's not going to leave them neither root nor branch. Go ahead.
That's also why the scriptures say, he shall be in strengths in the fullness of his sufficiency. You know what I'm saying? Catching him in his perfection. As soon as he filled his belly up, he's going to be filled in those straits when America's at its perfection. You know?
Go ahead.
And for the great abundance of thine enchantments, verse 10.
For thine enchantments, you see, because this place is built upon witchcraft and sorcery, man. Everything you look at, every place you look, on TV and the music and the food and just regular conversations with these regular people, they're being controlled, and their minds are being controlled by way of witchcraft, man.
That's right.
You see, high level wickedness going on in high places.
That's right.
That passes down into the regular people. Go ahead.
That's right, brother. Verse 10. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me.
None seeth me. You know, and that's how Esau really feels. He feels like his iniquity and his wickedness that the Most High doesn't see it.
That's right.
You know, Yahweh Bashim Yahshua, the angels don't see it, and they're just going to bypass and overlook it. And that's not the case. I think we can end off with that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go back to Ezekiel.
I had one more precept, but we can continue.
Nah, if you got it.
Well, just 2 Thessalonians 2 and 4, real fast, just to hammer the point of the I am and none else beside me.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
This is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. right? And it reads, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God,
And
showing
sitteth in
himself.
the temple of the Most High, which is the temple of who? The Israelites.
Right.
And plus, he sits also in our land, showing himself to be the children of the Heavenly Father. Right, go ahead.
Con. So that he is as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is a God.
And he shows himself that he is a God, man. You see, that's Esau's motive. That's what he wants to do. That's his motive.
Right.
He shows himself that he is a God in everything that he does, whether in a GMO foods, whether it's chemtrails in the air, fluoride in the water. He tries to one up the Heavenly Father on everything, man.
Right.
You see, and that's his mode of operations.
Con. If I may, land back, and even when you go into that, I don't want to say the actual account in Thessalonians, but we know the Romans were in power around that time, and they was usurping their authority as if they were that Godhead or godlike figure. Yeah. You have the account where Caligula, actually went to Jerusalem and said, "Build me a statue of myself here," and there was an uproar in Jerusalem around that time. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Just as an example of him actually sitting in the temple of the Most High, claiming to be a God. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And even Herod did the same thing, and that's why an angel of the Lord struck him dead right when he wanted everybody to worship him. Just wanted to land back into that point, and we see that energy still taking place today. You know what I'm saying? That temple being a people before it's a place. Right. You know what I'm saying? But clearly saying it's me. You got it, brother.
Con. And even too, now going into the historical account real quick, just real fast. When you had Tyrus and Tyre in power, all right, we know that it was a Phoenician city. Ancient Tyre was located above Israel. Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, and it was right there off of the Mediterranean Sea. Right. So, if Tyre was located off the Mediterranean Sea, just by questions, what made Tyre so rich?
Their ports.
Exactly. Tyre was the major port city.
Right. I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead. And also the amount of trees that it had. It was known for shipping those cedar trees. They had an abundance of wood, and they would ship it right down alongside the Mediterranean Sea when they would do it. Traffic. It would be a lot traffic. It would be a lot faster travel than trying to ship it through our land. And that's why when Solomon was getting that temple built, when you read about it, when they were shipping off them cedar trees and those different woods, they would just sell it all along the coast of the Mediterranean and drop it off right there in Jerusalem.
Because Tyre pretty much established its cities throughout the whole Mediterranean Sea. That's why when you had Hannibal Barca, all right, when he pretty much established Carthage out there in northern Africa, right, that was pretty much a subsection of what was going on in Tyre, because it wasn't just Hamites that was staying in Tyre. You had our people that was within Tyre as well too, because they was working with King Solomon and King David. That's right. They was working with Hiram, along with Solomon and King David, when they was getting them trees. It wasn't just them Hamites down there cutting the trees. Our people was going out there with them, helping. So of course, with us out there for a period of time, we were reproducing and having children. So we was in those lands as well. So when we would be traveling throughout the Mediterranean, through northern Africa, Spain, throughout the whole coast of the Mediterranean Sea, our seed was out there as well. But they pretty much had the whole Mediterranean on lock when it came to traveling, and when it came to different ports and different ships docking at Tyrus. It was pretty much like how Corinth was.
Absolutely.
You see, because where you had to pass through, people would stop their ships there, chill out for a little bit, whatever the case was. But I took some notes there. Also, too, the main part of Tyrus. All right, the main part of Tyrus that received a lot of money wasn't based off the Mediterranean. wasn't based off the island the city that was on the coast. The mainland of Tyrus, why it got so proud, was an island that was built maybe like a mile or two off the coast that received pretty much that was balling. It was like an island that was 2 miles off the coast. That was pretty much the hub. It was, if you wanted to go have a good time and get down, you went to Tyrus in that island. You know what I'm saying? But around that time, Ezekiel's prophesying And this is another key nugget. Ezekiel is prophesying that Tyrus is going to fall. You see what I'm saying? Now, according to history, Nebuchadnezzar came up against Tyre. Now, he besieged the city that was on the coast. But he didn't besiege, he never broke the defenses. And he never got through to besiege and take down Tyrus that was on the island. This is how you know that this is talking about another place in the future, too. Because it talks about how this place is going to be a heap of ashes when that didn't happen in history.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Now, Alexander the Greek did go over there and take it down. But this is going into how it was going to be a heap of ashes. It was going to be burned.
Yeah.
You see? So we can continue on Ezekiel.
Con, all right.
This is Ezekiel chapter 28. I'm going to just start from the top again. Ezekiel 28:1. The word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, say unto the prince of Tyrus, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thine heart is lifted up, and thou hast said, I am God. I sit in the seat of God in the midst of the seas.
In the midst of the seas, you see? In the midst of the seas. And doesn't America sit in the midst of the seas?
Right.
Go ahead.
And that goes into that island you was talking about, because that's where they held their pride at. You know, in the midst of the seas, yet thou art a man and not God. Though thou set thine heart as the heart of God, behold, thou art wiser than Daniel. There is no secret that they can hide from thee.
Right, and that's how Esau really feels, man. Esau feels that he's wiser than Daniel, man. You see what I'm saying? He feels like he knows everything. Esau's jargon on how he speaks. You know, when Esau puts that damn suit on and that tie, man, he feel like he feel like he's unstoppable. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He tell you something, man, and that's it. If Esau say it, man, it gotta be true. You know what I'm saying?
Verse 3.
But it says that there is no secret that they can hide from you. That's him trying to, put his satellites into space. You know what I'm saying? Trying to watch you through your phone on the cameras. Trying to cover up history, whitewash things. You know what I'm saying? He's wiser than Daniel. That's why the scripture also says in the New Testament, I forgot where it's at, but it says that the children of this world are wiser than the children of light. Yahweh said that. We can continue.
Con. I got a quick precept, really quick. Let's see here. This is what I was looking for. In Jeremiah chapter 49.
Oh yeah, I know you go.
Yeah, Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 7. It says, Concerning Edom, thus saith the Lord of hosts, Is wisdom no more in Teman? Is counsel perished from the prudent? Is their wisdom vanished? Flee ye, turn back, dwell deep, O ye inhabitants of Dedan, for I will bring calamity upon Esau, upon him, the time that I will visit him. Just going into that wisdom again, because Teman was the house of Esau, which we know we're going into Tyrus, but that scripture right there we're reading is also synonymous for Esau in these days. You know what I'm saying? Teman were known for being pretty much the brain of Edom, which we know nowadays that goes into those Germans. That spiritually is those Temanites, man, building those weapons. And Esau pretty much holds pride within his weaponry. That's what makes him feel like he's God, making those atom bombs and those nuclear weapons. Even when you go into the Manhattan Project, when that atom bomb was first created, when you had Johann von Blumenbach, you know what I'm saying? No, I'm sorry, not Johann von Blumenbach, but Robert Oppenheimer. You know what I'm saying? You also had Otto Hahn, which made those, and that caused Esau's pride to be lifted up so much, he sent those bombs over there to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, man. And after that had happened, fear dreaded amongst the whole world about these guys by their wisdom. Whoa, these guys made these bombs that can destroy nations.
Well, that was his blessing.
Right.
His blessing was that sword.
Con. I got you, brother. I got you. I just wanted to bring that out. That was 49.
Esau's always changed the world with his ability to create a weapon that no one had,
Con.
Yeah, had the liquid fire, the Greeks, to dismantle Navy fleets in a matter of moments,
Con.
And then he was able to create those swords. With the Roman Empire, he had those iron swords,
Yep.
And so, just the way he crafted it,
Con.
So, he was able to create all different type of weaponry. Now he has a drone,
Mm-hmm.
He can bomb you without even You know, if you watch a movie there's a movie called Staccato. You know, and it's basically elite American soldiers where they just go in and disrupt nations with just a group of people. You know, a team of 5 people can go into a country and just cause mayhem. Planting bombs, you know, using drones to blow up certain elected officials or intimidate people. You know, and so his blessing is that weapon, man.
That's right. That's right. This is Ezekiel chapter 28.
Yeah, just going in on what the elder was talking about, the drone program. You know, Esau put it up there, but now these drones are staying up there for weeks. You know, so he has all eyes on whatever he throw up there, and you can't even see it with a naked eye. It's that far up.
He got drones so small that you can't. He got drones so small now that you can't even see them. Like, right, they could be in the house.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It could be a mosquito.
Yeah.
Bro, it's been a mosquito in my car all week, man. I'm talking about I've been rolling with the windows down, trying to let that mug out, man. It won't bite me.
Right.
It won't bite me. Bro, that motherfucker been in my car all week, man. And I was telling other brothers, and they was like, it might be a spider and all that. You know, I mean, you can't put nothing past Esau, but bro, that mosquito is still in my car.
But
right,
the fact that he has the capability that, like, he really could make some shit like that.
Bro, they got bees, bro. They got mechanical bees and all kind of BS, man. That's what I'm saying. That's what the scripture means when it's talking about being wiser than Daniel. That's what I'm saying. Daniel wasn't doing all that with his intelligence. That's what I'm saying. Daniel ain't ruling right now. They want to say when the earth was given into the hand of the wicked, it wasn't given to Daniel. It was given to Esau. Right. You know what I'm saying? This is what he do with that information. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Trying to conquer death and all these different things he got going, man. You see?
I heard some too. It may seem far-fetched, but you can't put far-fetched on Esau like them young kids that be hardcore gamers online, like on Call of Duty.
I know
they say it be linked to like live with drones. You know what I'm saying? Man. Maybe on the video game, on the stick playing, you know, to them, they just playing the game. But they blowing shit up to live stuff. They hitting real targets.
I heard about that too.
Yeah. The ones that go hard, they use like the ones that really are good. You know.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a movie.
It was called The Gamer.
Oh yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That was a good ass movie, man.
It was absolutely. Yeah. This is Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 4. With thy wisdom and with thine understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches.
With thy wisdom, with thy understanding, thou hast gotten thee riches. Go ahead.
And thou hast gotten gold and silver into thy treasures.
Go ahead.
Verse 5. But thy great wisdom and by thy traffic.
Go ahead.
Hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches.
Right. It says, by thy great wisdom and by thy traffic, thou hast increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. Now, what does that word traffic mean?
Logistics to me.
It means trade.
Just being able to move like a great number of commodities and resources at the most efficient level, whether it's by cargo ship, cargo plane, cargo train, you know what I'm saying? Just all these different methods of just moving things, traffic.
Right.
Exactly.
It's trade. That's when you go into it. That's what traffic is. It's trade.
That's right.
Merchandise. Having merchandise.
They use niggas to traffic. You know what I'm saying? I'll say with that traffic, they putting all these jakes in jail with that traffic. I'm talking about that traffic. That traffic goes into all types of enterprises. They trafficking, human trafficking. You know what I'm saying? Esau doing it big. You know that's why he's so proud. Everything he been doing, working.
Right.
You know,
and even with these other nations, right? All these different nations, for them to operate correctly, to have food on their table, to have water bottles at their in their countries, to make cars, to have animals. All these different things are either moved by way of ships, by way of trains. But what powers those ships and those trains? Oil.
Yep.
So if you can control the oil, you pretty much control the world. So since the oil is backed by the petrodollar, by the Federal Reserve note, that's what made America so rich. You see, because in order for these nations to trade, they have to have dollars to move their ships from one area to another.
That's right.
That's why it says, by that great wisdom, 'cause that was a smart ass idea.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? To have all these nations pretty much be subject to you, to say this is the only way that you can trade is by if you have my currency and my money. By thy wisdom and by thy traffic, the trade that takes place, hast thou increased thy riches, and thine heart is lifted up because of thy riches. So if China is moving something to, if you have something from China being moved to America and America's buying it, right? America's going to get a share because they had to use American dollars to move whatever product there was over there.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And then even like if you have something from Australia being moved to India, America's gonna get a piece of that pie because they're using American dollars to buy the oil to be able to make that ship go from one area to another. See?
That's like at the international airport, when they change out currency. You have to, you're on American soil, so like when you go over there, you know how money is matched, just kind of like when you go to other nations, how the money is matched. You know what I'm saying? They say you can go to Mexico, a couple of thousand and live like a king. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because like a brother saying, the dollar here over where Esau holds a lot, holds a lot of ground. That's why they can rule over these other nations like that.
Absolutely. I got a quick precept too. This is Ezekiel chapter 17, verse 4. He cropped off the top of his young twigs, talking about, it's talking about us pretty much, and carried it into a land of traffic.
Land of traffic.
He set it in the city of merchants.
In the city of merchants. That's why that leads up with the Revelation, the 18th chapter.
Right. Right.
What was found in Babylon was what? The souls of men. All these different kinds of cinnamons, herbs,
right?
Incense,
Exactly.
myrrh, all this traffic that takes place within America.
That's right.
Because what does America do? Does America move more merchandise or does it buy more merchandise?
Buy.
It's a consumer nation, man.
Plus they're sending all the jobs over there. They got these pacts with India, sending these care packages to other nations. Like this is the agreement we're gonna agree upon. So that's why a lot of people are hurting for work too.
Yeah. And that's why this leads back up to with ancient Tyre. You see what I'm saying? Because they pretty much had the whole. If you look at a map of the whole Mediterranean Sea, if you look at a map of the whole Mediterranean, their enterprise, which starts at Tyre, went all through the coast, all through northern Africa, all the way through Spain. So they was out there setting up shop, selling lumber, different ships coming from different areas docking at the main hub.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right. Solomon's fleet.
Exactly.
All right, a lot of them was from Tyrus, but it also says of Tarshish, and Tarshish is Spain.
Spain, exactly.
So it was all through that region right there. It was men of Tyre that dwelled in all those different lands, and that's that navy when they had sent out to this land and gathered more things. Just made me think about that. That's all.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that's how that can link back up with America too, because America pretty much has its hands in all these different nations' traffic. Go ahead.
Come.
We had a point.
Yeah, I got a precept going into what Sha'ar just stated. Calling that Tarshish. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 23, verse 1. It says, "The burden of Tyre, how ye ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so there is no house, no entering in from the land of Chittim. It is revealed to them."
Right.
That's a good precept, brother.
That's a prophecy, man, brother.
Isaiah 23.
23 and 1.
This page falls out. So yeah, that's why it says how ye ships of Tarshish, man, because Tarshish was making money with Tyre too. That's why in Revelation the 18th chapter, all these different nations are going to be howling and astonished and wailing like, man, the great city is destroyed. We can't make no more money no more.
I said if I needed something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I only have
Because this is the main nation that buys from these different nations, man.
Right.
You see, we just have the links all right up. You know. Did you have a precept?
Oh no.
Okay, come. Go ahead. We can continue.
This is Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 6. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because thou hast set thine heart as the heart of the Most High. Behold, therefore I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness.
They shall defile thy brightness. You see, that word brightness goes back to that same word Hayallah, man. That shine.
Ezekiel 28 and 6.
You know, that brightness, or that, I'm sorry, it's not Hayallah, but it goes back to being like a splendor or the magnificence of that place. It says that strangers are going to come upon them and do what? It says, therefore, it says, behold, I will bring strangers upon thee, the terrible of the nations, and they shall draw their swords against the beauty of thy wisdom, and they shall defile thy brightness. And that's what's happening right now. You see what I'm saying? These different nations are beginning to come up against Babylon, man. You see? Somebody get Jeremiah 50 and 9 real quick.
50 and 9?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say the word brightness?
Go ahead.
This is Hebrews 33 and 14. It's Yifyah.
Is it Yakayah? Yipaya.
I'm saying right for
What's the definition say?
It says splendor, brightness,
Splendor, brightness,
shining.
the magnificent, glorious America, from sea to shining sea. You know what I'm saying? That's how America believes, man. It believes that this is the place that is the most splendid, magnificent place on the planet Earth. You know.
This is Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great
And
nations.
see, I will raise to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations. Go ahead.
From the north country.
From the north country, which Kowal, what's that north country?
America.
Read it. You good.
This is verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country.
From the north country. You can finish the verse and I'll ask you.
And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain.
So if we know that Babylon is if we know that Babylon is America,
Shalom Yasharallah, peace Israel. All praise, glory, and honor be unto Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakak Wadash. Double honor to our apostles and our elders, great millstone. Peace and blessings and salutations to the elect of Israel. Shalom. In Babylon the Great is found the blood of the saints. In Babylon the Great is found the blood of the saints. Who is Babylon the Great today? North America, the United States. According to Psalms chapter 137, verse 7 down to 8, you Edomites, you so-called white people, are called the daughter of Babylon. So America, North America, is the modern day Babylon. Also pursuing to Isaiah chapter 47, you are called the virgin daughter of Babylon. So this is the new Babylon, North America. And who are the saints today? The saints are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Hispanics, Native and Seminole Indians. People of Negroid and American Indian descent are the saints, because the saints are the Israelites. You are the Israelites. Okay? And you are called saints. Pursuing to Psalms chapter 148 and verse 14, the Lord calls us his saints because he gave us his laws, statutes, and commandments. So we are his holy ones. So in Babylon the Great, in the United States, is found the blood of the saints, the blood of the Israelites. So you Edomites, you so-called white people, have a lot to pay for. You have to pay for the shedding of blood of the Israelites. You have to pay for all the atrocities, okay, for separating families, for horrific incidents. The list goes on and on. The lynchings, the burnings, okay, making us to lodge without clothing, forcing us on reservations, okay. You have to pay for all that. We're in a time that Esau has to pay. And there is a judgment. There's a judgment for you. And this is the only way. Now I'm going to read the judgment. Revelation chapter 17, verse 1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. So the judgment is nuclear destruction in World War III. The great whore is America. America's called a great whore. All right? Because America made all nations leave their old ways to follow this new way, to follow the Western world, the Western philosophies. Okay? These other nations, they became Americanized. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. The many waters represents many nations, many people. Okay? Because the wicked elite of Esau, the international banking families, they rule the planet Earth through America. Okay? America has military bases everywhere, over 800. So America is controlling the earth. But really, the wicked elite of Esau are controlling the earth through America. And it says in verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, spiritual fornication. They went a-whoring after the Western world. They left their old ways to follow this new way. And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. America's democracy and foreign policy. Okay? So the kings of the earth have committed fornication. They're worshiping the image of the beast, believing in the American way. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. That woman is America. That beast is NATO and the EU. Okay? The 7 heads represents Esau's rulership going back during the time of the Greeks up until today.
Okay? And the 10 horns represents the EU. All right? But the 7 heads, that's Greece, Germania Major, Germania Minor, Rome, England, or Britain, rather. Britain, the Spanish, and the French. Okay? Which America was birthed out of Britain. And America came out of those 3 horns. Okay? When you read in the book of Daniel. Okay? And in verse 4, it says, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand. Right? So people view America as the land of opportunity. Okay? So that's why the Apostle John is seeing America all decked out like this, because America is the land of opportunity. At least it was, because now we're living in a time when America's going down. These aren't the golden days anymore. Having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication, which goes into the LGBTQP. That's a part of the abominations. All types of wickedness. Adultery goes on here. Bestiality goes on here. I mean, you name it. Everything goes in America. You have GMO foods. Okay? The minds of the people are polluted. Since the day you're born, you're polluted here. You're being indoctrinated in Esau's school system. Okay? So there's a lot of abominations of America's fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great. So it's a mystery that America's Babylon the Great. But it's not a mystery anymore. Now we know it. Pursuant to Colossians chapter 1, verse 26. The mystery which have been hid for ages and for generations is now being made manifest to his saints, which are the Israelites. And you shed our blood in this land. And I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into that part. We are the saints. We know the mystery, okay? And upon her forehead was the name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Which, when you look at that in the Hebrew, that's equivalent to 666. Okay? So this is a beast system. It's a beast system. It's not an actual beast. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints. And I saw the woman, America, Babylon the Great, drunken with the blood of the saints. So when you look at all the lynchings, and the burnings, when you look at all the different wars that the so-called white man, Esau, fought against our brothers, the so-called Native Americans, the tribe of Gad, okay? When you think about what Andrew Jackson did, signing the Indian Removal Act, okay? Pushing our brethren out west. You have what was called the Trail of Tears. Okay, it tells you in the book of Job that Esau calls the naked to lodge without clothing. That makes you think of the Trail of Tears. That's what you did, man. You got to pay for that. You think about Wounded Knee, the Wounded Knee massacre. Okay, that happened in South Dakota. You got to pay for that. Esau hasn't paid for that. And that took place during the winter time. Okay? I believe it was December 29th in 1890, if I'm not mistaken. You got to pay for that. You got to pay for everything. You got to pay for slavery and post-slavery. Okay? Separating our families, raping our women. Okay? Lynching our men. You got to speak on that again. Okay? Buck breaking. All right? Tying a man's limbs to 4 horses and whipping those horses so they run in 4 directions. Okay? Breaking that man's limbs off, tearing his limbs off, which that's where you get the Levi symbol today. And as far as, you Jakes, you like to wear Timberland boots, which we got to wear these clothes because it tells you how we should go to our enemies for the one of all things. But just to speak on something for a minute, you have that Timberland symbol, you know, on the Timberland boots. We know the symbol is a tree. That goes back to how you Edomites were hanging us from trees. Okay? You got to pay for that. You got to pay for everything. What you did to our children, having our children, our sons and daughters pick cotton, and you were raping them and murdering them, burning them, feeding them to alligators, feeding them to sharks. You got to pay for that. So dealing with North America, Babylon the Great was found the blood of the saints in her, and with the blood of the martyrs of Yahushua. So the prophets died here. And a lot of the prophets are going to die again. When martial law was implemented, okay, Esau, he brought back the guillotine. You have what was called, or you have what is called the Noahide laws. So Esau has about 30,000 guillotines ready to go, fully functional, to behead those that refuse the mark of the beast. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration, right? Because John thought it was an actual woman, but really it represented America. Okay? So he saw a beautiful woman, but this woman is a whore, a slut. And this woman will be burned with fire. Okay? And it's not an actual woman. It's that great city, America. Revelation chapter 18 and verse 9. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. That's the judgment of the great whore. Standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. Nuclear destruction. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore, because America is a consumer-based corporation. All right? You have all sorts of goods that are imported here. All right? Proving this is Babylon the Great. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and of thyine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory. Basically, this is all parabolic for all the merchandise that's sold here in America. All your electronics. Everything is brought here. Everything is imported here. Even your American flag. Everything's made in China. You find out it's made in India. It's made in Pakistan. Okay, everything is shipped here from overseas. And all manner of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments. Right, so all types of different things, man. You know, precious oils and frankincense and wine. Hey, you have a lot of wine that's foreign. A lot of this wine comes from Argentina. It comes from Spain. It comes from Italy. So it's shipped here. And oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. And those were the first merchandise that was sold here. Okay, to North America. Slaves. The slaves of our people. Our people were brought here as slaves. Okay. So that's the point right there. So let me jump down to verse 24. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. And Babylon the Great was found the blood of saints. And it said prophets first because the prophets died here. And like I said, the prophets, a lot of them are going to die again. Now, all of us are not going to die, but certain brothers are going to be decapitated. They're going to be, put in concentration camps and beheaded for the testimony of Yahushua. Okay? But they're going to come back anyway. But that's the point. Esau has to pay for this. You so-called white people have to pay for slavery. You have to pay for the blood that you shed in his land. This is why America will be destroyed. I'm going to close out with one more scripture. You brothers know where I'm going. Numbers chapter 35 and verse 33. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land. So when you kill someone unjustly, unlawfully, that defiles the land. So you think about all the thousands to millions of Israelites that Esau has murdered here in North America that defiled this land. And you're still doing it today. A lot of Israelites are innocent. You know, Esau, by way of his cops, are shooting them down. You're constantly defiling this land. And the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So the person or the nation of people that shed the blood, their blood has to be shed. This is why America, North America, Babylon the Great, has to be destroyed. It got to be destroyed. That's the only way for this land to be cleansed. So that's the point right there. I hope you were edified. Matter of fact, let me read verse 34. Defile not therefore the land which ye inhabit. Defile not therefore the land which ye shall inhabit, wherein I dwell. For I, Yahweh, dwell among the children of Israel, the sons of Israel. Right. And the people that were here before Esau were our brethren, the so-called Native Americans, the tribe of Gad, also the tribe of Issachar. Okay. And the tribe of Reuben. They were here in North America first. And this land has been defiled. So Esau is going to pay. America will be destroyed. America's Babylon the Great. So with that, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honor to our apostles and elders, great millstone. Peace and blessings to the elect. Shalom.
Want to get right to Hurricane Michael taking aim at the Gulf Coast. Take a live look at the satellite.
Most destructive storm to hit the Florida Panhandle in decades.
People are racing to escape Panama City, where the hurricane is expected to make landfall. Traffic has been building up since Monday, ahead of this morning's mandatory evacuation.
This is on Sarasota County beaches, covered with dead fish. There are eels, just a ton of marine life, and we're talking about fish by the thousands on the entire stretch of one of America's most beautiful beaches.
Yeah, Rob, it's pretty stinky out here, and it's just a mess. Really, as far as you can see, there are just nothing but dead fish. It's really just not a place that you want to be.
And Jesus answered and said to them, Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you will hear wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. We have a major hurricane coming in the name of Hurricane Michael. And I'm going to cover this today. And of course, this is becoming much more typical. We see this with a confluence of events, an increased magnification of storm after storm after storm. I mean, I've reported on so many of these storms over the last 12 months, I've almost forgotten how many that there's been. Whether or not this is Harvey or Irma, more recently Florence, and now Hurricane Michael. And I'm not putting out this warning. This is from the National Weather Service. They just put out this tweet a few moments ago at 8:53 a.m., October 10th today. Landfall of hashtag Hurricane Michael is imminent. This is a worst case scenario for the Florida Panhandle. Listen to your local emergency officials. stay inside and survive. In addition to that, there has been a mandatory evacuation issued. There is up to 500,000, probably soon to be millions of people that have, are, or in the process of evacuating this location. And they are calling this not just a biblical storm, but the storm of the century. In fact, there's only been a handful of Category 4 storms that have ever made landfall since like the 1800s or something like that. And only, I think, 3 Category 5s where they've hit with extraordinary force. We are talking 150 miles per hour potentially, if not faster winds, and total devastation. I mean, we are still cleaning up from Florence in the Carolinas. We've had a biblical fish die-off on the freeways of this part of the country. They're still cleaning up. I mean, just think about the billions of dollars worth of damage that it's already caused. Insurance companies, of course, coughing a lot of this up, and in some cases, not. And the horrifying casualties of life lost. I remember reporting specifically on Florence, I think the first dead civilian was a mother and her baby as she was nursing him or her child at the time. So absolutely devastating, and our prayers go out to this community. But I can't help but echo what we just read here from the Holy Book. I can't help but just espouse the truth to you guys. Well, what's happening worldwide today in the United States and all around us? It is the most obvious thing that we have ever seen. And we need to address it, and we need to understand, more importantly, of course, I can't predict, no man can, but we need to understand what's likely to come next. Okay, I just issued a report earlier this morning, a video that came out from the IMF, warning of a total meltdown in global stock markets. In fact, the stock market here in the USA, the Dow, is down some 400 points. Tech stocks are bleeding. The IMF, in the last 24 hours, warned of potentially over $5 trillion being wiped out in the blink of an eye. They're warning of government pensions at local, state, federal levels being completely extinguished. What's going to happen then? You know, what's going to happen when all these people that think it's a guarantee that their 401ks and their pensions are still going to be there? You know, people think that we can escape what we've seen in the past, what we've seen in history. 1929 being a classic example with the Great Crash, and then, of course, a decade period where it took 10 years and World War II to rectify itself, not to mention millions and millions of people losing life and limb that were affected by that. Let's take a look at this story. And the eye being developed in this storm, from what I understand, is not a traditional eye. In fact, those studying it, that truly are the experts with these weather events, say that it's extraordinary. They've never seen anything like this. They don't even know how this formed because it's not supposed to form. Isn't that interesting? You know, we hear, and I think it's worth critically thinking about, that these are all engineered events potentially. This is weather engineering. We saw this with the Chinese Olympic Games where they literally made it rain, manufactured rain, and then cleared the clouds. We know that things like HAARP exist, are reality. We know that our government and global governments around the world can engineer typhoons, tsunamis via nukes, and also potentially in this case, hurricanes that are devastating this part of the country like nukes are going off. You know, we've seen this so many times, it is ridiculous. Landfall is hitting now. So when you're getting this message, the devastation is actually taking place. Just hours away from an expected Wednesday afternoon landfall, Hurricane Michael became ever stronger and more organized on Tuesday night, last night, over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. Michael's high winds, torrential rain, and very large storm surge were pushing briskly toward the Florida Panhandle and the Big Bend region just to the east. The area is in line to experience the worst impacts. They issued an update. Michael has been upgraded, of course, to a Category 4 strength as of 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with top sustained winds of 130, which have been upgraded to 150 miles per hour, as I stated, with some additional strengthening possible, which we've actually seen come to fruition. Satellite images of Michael's evolution on Tuesday night were, in a word, jaw-dropping. A massive blister of thunderstorms, convection, erupted and wrapped around the storm's eye, which has taken a surprisingly long time to solidify. Again, people have never seen anything like this before, the experts are saying. A layer of dry air several miles above the surface being pulled into Michael from the west may have been one of the factors that kept Michael from sustaining a classic fully closed eye wall. You can see the embedded tweet below. A closed eye wall is normally a prerequisite for a hurricane to intensify robustly, but somehow, mysteriously, Michael managed to reach Category 3 and now Category 4 without one. How is that? And again, I'm not a weather expert, but how is that possible? Maybe you want to put in your comments below, and we can see that tweet there. Based purely on the Dvorak method, which uses cloud top temperatures from satellites to estimate hurricane strength, Michael was a Category 4 storm by Tuesday evening. Michael's central pressure dropped from 965 MB at 1 p.m. Eastern to 947 MB at 11 p.m. Another sign of robust strengthening. So what do we have here? We have a storm like we've never seen, potentially in the history of the world, affecting this region of the United States. Mandatory alerts. The National Weather Service saying this is a worst case scenario. We have 500,000, potentially millions of people evacuated and affected. We see this with the mass exodus, almost looking like a biblical exodus on the freeways today. Again, this is why we always tell you guys to prepare, right? You always want to be prepared. You don't want to be rushing around to the grocery store during a crisis. You don't want to literally be trying to get your hands on water while you're being hit by Category 4 or food or anything like that. USA Today reports that it is too late to run. Hurricane Michael set to crash into Florida as the historic Category 4 storm. Trump has been issuing statements around this. Again, our prayers are with everybody affected. We've got our National Hurricane Center warning here. You can see the trajectory of how this is hitting. Pull this up here on the map. Again, this is the biggest thing that we have ever seen. We've got some radar information for those of you interested in the specifics of how the storm's been developing in real time. You can see that right here. And of course, there are live streams all around the world as America is dealing with this grave consequence, grave natural event. It really is incredible. So, you know, today's story is really just bringing you guys the news of what's happening in the world today. But I think that we can understand as thinking minds, as individuals that critically think, that this isn't a coincidence. Okay, it's not a coincidence that I'm standing here. It's not a coincidence that I report on storms of this magnitude. Storms, earthquakes, floods, fires, tribulation, like what I just read to you in the Bible, in the Holy Book, and it's almost every single day we're bringing you this news. So please prepare yourself, prepare your family, prepare your friends. God bless each and every one of you. We're hoping that this thing dies down, so to speak, isn't as catastrophic as the National Weather Service is predicting. And it does raise a few eyebrows, not just from the biblical perspective, but also from the engineering perspective, as we know that these events can be force-fed by government power, okay? And dictate, I mean, hey, if you've got the technology of HARP, why not try to break this thing up? A lot of people ask. And I'm not saying I personally believe necessarily that this is an engineered weather storm, but I am saying it's a possibility, not to mention, everything else that we've echoed today. So stay tuned, share this video, get it out to your loved ones. Thank you very much.
Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Arakakadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of great millstone that taught me the truth, and much love, greetings, and salutations to the hopeful elect, the tabernacle of David. Now, just real quick, I just want to respond to this article. This is from the dailymail.co.uk. And the headlines, Putin is planning troops and missiles in eastern Libya in bid to seize control over the biggest illegal immigration route to Europe, UK intelligence fears. And if that's so, that's pursuant to prophecy in Ezekiel the 38th chapter, which I'm about to get, because Russia's whole position in this military strategy is to be a guard, a sentinel to these aligned countries, basically for political and economic leverage against the West. Okay, that's what it's all about. And Libya being attacked by NATO in the past, Russia is not going to stand for that to happen again, because there was a different president that was ruling over Russia at the time during the Obama administration. But now that we have Putin, all right, this guy is totally different. He's more of a chess player. All right, very strategic with his moves and how he positions his troops, the different trade and negotiations. All right, him supplying these different nations with weapons, to defend their countries. Well, that's part of him being strategic, especially in the on the stage of war. All right, so now this is what they're fearing. They're fearing that there's a takeover by the Russian military to actually take control over that region. Well, Africa already been a battleground for different militaries, because you got the West or the United States, they got mercenaries over. They've been having mercenaries over there, but you also got the Chinese military as well over there in that area as well. So, things are all leading up to the Middle Eastern conflict that we've been telling you about. All right, the Battle of Armageddon, the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is going to be based in the Middle East. That's why there is no peace in the Middle East. All right, so I just want to read this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just want to read a portion of it and filter it through the prophecy in Ezekiel. All right, because one of the jobs of the men of the Lord is to watch, man. We're the Lord's watchmen. So that means we got to be constantly on our watch when it comes to world events as it pertains to the prophecies. So it says Russian President Vladimir Putin is planting troops and weapons in Libya to establish a strategic stronghold against the West, intelligence chiefs said. All right. Another word for a stronghold is like a fort. All right, something that you build in order to keep out enemies. All right, and not only that, but you also watch and you take full control from what's within that stronghold to protect it from outsiders. All right, and Libya has been open to attacks, and it's been under total chaos, since what happened to Gaddafi back in 2011. So now Russia got to come in and play its role in securing that area, just like it's doing in Syria right now. And that's why Syria has been able to remain afloat. All right. That's because Russia is being a guard unto these nations. All right. It says Prime Minister Theresa May has been warned that the country will become Putin's new Syria by using it as a base for missiles. 2 military bases have been set up in the towns of Benghazi and Tobruk under the cover of Wagner Group, a private military firm. We scroll down. It says it is believed Moscow's main priority is to take control over the North African country, which is the biggest illegal immigration route to Europe. The Sun Online reports, with fears the influx would be like a tap being turned on. Dozens of GRU Secret Service personnel and Spetsnaz special forces officers are reportedly training in the east of the country. Caliber missiles, as well as S-300 air defense systems, are also thought to be on Libyan ground. All right, so basically, Russia is securing these regions by giving them defense. All right, and that's what's causing this shift to happen, where you got these countries who once depended on America are now, turning to Russia, because Russia actually has the technology. They have enough weapons to supply other countries, and as long as they're arming these other nations, these nations will actually hop on the train, so to speak, with Russia. And that'll leave America even more isolated, especially with the tactics that Trump is resorting to, which he's being controlled by the Zionist regime. All right, that's why it tells you in prophecy, the least of the flock shall draw them out. And Israel is going to be the cause of why America is going to come to its demise in this final world's war. All right, so basically what this is going into is they basically suspect that Russia is placing a military stronghold in Libya. All right, and they're not going to allow for Libya to succumb to what happened to them when Gaddafi was alive. All right, Medvedev he responded, but he didn't really do anything to suppress the issue. All right, so that takes me to the actual prophecy when you go to Ezekiel 38. So let's get this real quick. Salat. It says Ezekiel 38 verse 1. It says, "And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief priest of Meshech and Tubal," and it's talking about Russia, "and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws and will bring thee forth," meaning I will control you. All right, the spirit of the Lord is in control. All right, and he's basically allowing Russia to build militarily and economically to face the United States and NATO, which is the beast. Okay, and especially with the countries that are aligning itself with Russia. All right, it says, "And all thine armies," it's like all thine army, horses and horsemen, and all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. And that's because this is back in Ezekiel's time, the apparatus that they had back then was just bucklers and shields, all right, swords, armor, breastplates, things of that nature. But if you take it in, because this is prophetic, the modern day apparatus is what? What are these countries using to defend themselves, or to intercept and block attacks? Missile defenses. Okay, missile defenses. And then you also got your swords, which is the modern day gun. Okay, you got your your fighter jets. You got your submarines, your naval ships, your air force, all right, so on and so forth. You got your ballistic missiles and also your intercontinental ballistic missiles. And these are the things that the Lord has allowed these nations to build for this oncoming war that's taking place. All right, this is them preparing for war, as it says in Joel the 3rd chapter, which that's a scripture we get all the time. All right, Joel 3:9. All right, let all these you men prepare for war. Wake up the mighty men. All right, turn your your pruning hooks into matter of fact, let me just get it. All right. Let me just go on ahead and get it. And that's why Russia's been arming Turkey, Syria. They've been arming, and now they're putting troops and missiles in Libya. All right. This is Joel 3. And I think recently they just also armed, I believe it was India. All right. They all are buying those S-300s and S-400s from Russia. All right. Because they all are preparing to protect themselves from the West. All right. This is Joel 3 and 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Tether, cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. All right. So that's talking about what? The battle of Armageddon. Also, this same war that Ezekiel is prophesying about is the same war. All right. So going back, it says, and I will turn thee back, or talking about Russia, and I will put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords, meaning all the allies of Russia. They're going to all be armed. All right. And Russia is arming them. They produced their own weapons, but it is becoming more advanced because of the technology of Russia. Okay. It says verse 5, it says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. Showing you that what? Iran is part of the alliance, of course. Ethiopia, a North African country, and Libya, another North African country. All right, and they're suspecting, according to their the UK intelligence, that Putin is basically putting troops and arming them with missiles and weapons. Okay, let's go back to that. All right, it says it is believed Moscow's main priority is to take control in the North African country, which is the biggest illegal immigration route to Europe. The Sun Online reports. All right, so he's placing his stronghold over there as well, just like he's doing with Syria. So what is he ultimately doing? He's guarding them from the threat of what? The West, which the West rise the beast, which is NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. All right. So going back, it says Gomer and all his bands, and Gomer is Turkey, and the house of Tergama of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and I just read in Joel what this is talking about. Be prepared for war, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, meaning all your allies, and be thou a guard unto them. All right. And when you look up the word guard, let's look up guard real quick. It's a lot. When you look up guard, it says watch over in order to protect or control. All right, to secure. All right. Sentinel, shielded, manned. Okay. A person who keeps watch, especially a soldier or other person formally assigned to protect a person or to control access to a place. All right. And that's Russia getting that leverage over the country. So Russia's being a guard to Libya. Okay. So hey, prophecy is actually speaking, man. All right. That lets you know this final world's war is right around the corner, and salvation is nigher than we believe, man. So you gotta keep believing, man, and have faith, man. Okay, let's get Habakkuk chapter 2 and 3. It says, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry." All right. So you know, this thing is moving fast. So knowing that the days are speeding up, you know, what ought we to do? Be in all holy conversation, man. All right. Be, you know, seeking the Lord, man. Getting his word, understanding it, preaching it, having faith, prayer. All right. And also watching, man, being circumspect, redeeming the times because they're evil. All right. So, you know, that's pretty much it. You know, I didn't have many precepts. You know, I just want to really go into the article and you know, basically filter it through the prophecy, especially regarding what's happening up here in up in Libya, man. That's pursuing the prophecy, and our people got to see that. Okay. So anyway, you know, that's pretty much it. Hopefully this was edifying. I want to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. And with that, I'll say shalom, work back a thumb to the elect. Shalom.
The abrupt resignation of U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley, who announced on Monday that she will be leaving her post by the end of the year, came as a surprise to many. However, U.S. President Donald Trump said he had already known about it. Haley's resignation has been the subject of speculation, as she did not explain the reason behind her decision. Whether or not it was because of her failure to fulfill Trump's America First agenda, many believe her legacy will be marked as the ambassador who led the U.S. toward isolation during her 19-month tenure. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations tells Press TV that Haley's approach was wrong from the very beginning.
Nikki Haley came to the United Nations with the wrong approach, the approach that I am new sheriff in town, and then she was unable to do anything in cooperation with others.
During her tenure, the U.S. unilaterally withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord, the UN Human Rights Council, and as a staunch supporter of Israel, U.S. blocked any condemnatory resolution against the regime. The last straw being the UNESCO resolution supporting a Palestinian World Heritage Site. Then there was Iran and the unilateral withdrawal of the U.S. from the UN Security Council ratified nuclear agreement known as the JCPOA.
I would say that Nikki Haley made America isolated, every day more isolated, in two fronts. One was on Palestinian issues, the other was on Iranian issues. Then when these two issues were discussed, nobody would support Haley, and Haley is calling this her achievement, while everybody knows that this is a total failure.
Meanwhile, Republicans and Democrats alike are wondering why she stepped aside now. Why did Haley not wait until after the midterm congressional elections due for mid-November?
While we may or may not find out the real reasons for Haley's resignation in the near future, she claims that she's not planning on a 2020 presidential run. After all, many here say at the age of 46, she has the luxury to perhaps wait it out until 2024. Susan Madaris, Press TV, New York.
This is the Defense Minister, Moshe Yaalon, talking just a couple of weeks ago. Israel is going to hurt Lebanese civilians, to include kids of the family. We went through a very long discussion. We did it then. We did it in the Gaza Strip. We are going to do it in any round of hostilities in the future. That's the Defense Minister. This is the Military Chief of Staff, Benny Gantz. The next round of violence will be worse and see this suffering increase. He headed up the military assaults on Gaza, the last two. This is the Minister for Education. in the Netanyahu government. There will never be a peace plan with the Palestinians. I will do everything in my power to make sure they never get a state. He also said, if you catch terrorists, you simply have to kill them. I've killed a lot of Arabs in my life, and there's no problem with that. This is the Minister for Justice. Palestinians are all enemy combatants. This also includes the mothers of the martyrs. They should follow their sons. Nothing would be more just. They should go, as should the physical homes in which they raised the snakes. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. That's the Israeli Minister for Justice in the last few months. The Israeli Deputy Minister for Defense. Palestinians are beasts. They are not human. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, C.P. Hotley, this is the last one. My position is that between the sea and the Jordan River, there needs to be one state only, the State of Israel. There is no place for any agreement of any kind that discusses the concession of Israeli sovereignty over lands conquered in 1967. Now, these are the official statements of several ministers of the current government of Israel. In one case, actually advocating genocide of all Palestinians, including children, and calling them snakes. Now, can I ask you, Taoiseach, do you not think that if we're defining terrorism, that is the language and thinking of terrorists? That it is absolutely unacceptable in civilized politics, in civilized international relations, for the heads of government of a state that we carry on normal relations with and who you met in Paris to advocate those sort of views when we know they have also led on to the deaths of thousands of Palestinians, innocent men, women and children. What have you to say, Taoiseach, about those sort of views being expressed by the Israeli government?
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up, a concise show dedicated to bringing you the most relevant independent news as we see it from the last 24 hours.
So I wanted to begin with that clip, which I've shown many times in the past, to preface what we're going to be talking about today. In general, the idea of something that's really been getting under my skin more and more, the brazenness of the specific most, touted U.S. allies in the world today, and the way with which they're carrying out such atrocities with impunity. And then under the guise from the United States side of claiming that, oh, well, they're trying to do this, they're trying to stop this, or they're doing what they can to minimize it. It's not really trying to make it seem like it's not ethnic cleansing. Like it's not outright war crimes being carried out under the guise of some kind of surreptitious plan to help people. That's what they want you to think. But the point of a clip like that is to show you that there's a long history, specifically in regard to Israel, which is the first things we're going to get into today, that there have a long history of seeking these things out, of illegally occupying Palestine and displacing them over and over and over, and just arbitrarily killing people for whatever they see necessary while calling themselves the only democracy in the Middle East. And then even the hypocrisy of all of it, while the United States still stands by these allies as the good guys in the world while pointing the finger at people who are doing arguably, demonstratably, I would say, far, far, far less, if anything at all. And that's an argument you could definitely make, as we're seeing sanctions continue to be forced on Iran while the rest of the world seemingly disagrees, and while the United Nations largely is aware that that's not even the case, the things they're claiming. It's very frustrating to see this, and of course we're touching on Saudi Arabia today as well. In my mind, two of the most important things happening in the world. But we're also going to touch on some things here in this country, something about 5G we're going to touch on today. This will likely be a little bit longer of a show, so stick with us because we're going to go through a lot of content today. But let's get with the first topic today, and this is something in regard to Israel, and something that rings true for me in regard to Joe Meters, the veteran from the USS Liberty of all places, who was held, detained, beaten in Israel while on aboard a ship in the middle of the ocean, hijacked, pirated by Israeli forces, brought back to, I think it was Ashdod in Israel, and held there, detained for doing nothing illegal, simply because they were trying to bring aid to the Palestinians. And now we're talking about an American citizen, mind you, who is being held in Israel at this moment, as I understand it. Things may change in the moment, but at last I checked, she was still being held in Israel, simply for supporting the BDS movement in her own country. This first story coming from MiddleEastMonitor.com, entitled U.S. Student Held in Israel for BDS Support. This is a huge jump here in regard to what's allowed, what is the international norms, and what is allowed to just pass without acknowledgement from a U.S. ally. Imagine for a moment if Russia had detained an American citizen for anything. Imagine for a moment if Assad in Syria had detained an American citizen for anything. Now realize that we're talking about an American citizen traveling under a legitimate visa to participate in a school event because of what she was doing and how well she was doing, that they then hold her, detain her for support back home for something that they deem to be against them. I mean, it's a political movement in and of itself. The reality that this is even allowed is one thing, but the larger point that I want to make is how nothing is being done about this. There's no grandstanding of Donald Trump getting up and making a huge deal about how what's going on and we have to do something. No, it's a side comment. It's dismissed or not acknowledged at all. Very important story for you to pay attention to. So this is an American student who is now ultimately the latest victim of Israel's law. It is a law, as far as they're concerned, targeting supporters of the global BDS, the Boycott, Divest, and Sanctions movement, which I recommend you all support in regard to what this really means. It has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, has nothing to do with Jewish people. It is about the Zionist Israeli government and the atrocities they're committing under support of the United States, or vice versa, however you want to look at it. Now, Laura Al-Qasim, I believe is her last name, 22 years old, has been held since last Tuesday at Israel's Ben Gurion Airport. Al-Qasim is a graduate of the University of Florida and a U.S. citizen whose grandparents were Palestinian. She tried to enter Israel to study on a master's degree program at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, having been granted a student visa by the Israeli Consulate General in Miami. Now, upon her arrival at the airport, Israeli officials denied her entry. But it didn't stop there. Her supposed crime, according to the Strategic Affairs Ministry, is that while studying for her bachelor's degree in Florida, she was president of an organization that supported the BDS campaign against Israel. Now, even that in of itself is indirect. Yes, she was a president of an organization that also supported BDS. But that's enough. In the eyes of Israel, it's enough to detain and violate the rights of an American citizen and an international citizen, the rights of free movement. I mean, the concept of what they're doing here is I mean, I don't want to say unprecedented. I'm sure it's happened before, but in the eyes of what the U.S. is willing to condemn in other countries and not saying this is a big deal, and I doubt we'll see any real action taken, just like they failed to even talk about Joe Meters, the, as I pointed out, veteran of the USS Liberty, a U.S. veteran of all people, beaten and detained in Israel. A special ministry report has been compiled about Al-Qasim and her political activities. Of course, it was labeled somewhat dramatically sensitive, like this is some kind of a secret agent aspect here. And according to Haaretz, includes information from 5 different web pages. So clearly compiling information on people because they support a movement that calls out their war crimes. Which, it makes sense, but the reality of why they're doing it and what they're trying to cover up should be more apparent to all of us. Al-Qasim is being held at the detention facility at this moment, where she will remain, as they claim, until a final decision on her case is made. So far, only Al-Qasim's lawyers have even been allowed to visit her. An official at the U.S. Embassy in Israel said earlier on Sunday that he was aware of Al-Qasim's detention. He said, quote, "We are aware of the case and our embassy is providing consular assistance." And that's it. No more discussion. We're helping out where we can. Look at other things. Stop paying attention. This is nothing to see here. Really downplaying the seriousness of the illegal detention of an American citizen for simply supporting a movement. Very big deal to realize here, and what this says about Israel and what this says about the United States and the Trump administration's willingness or lack thereof to do anything against Israel. I wonder how many American citizens they would have to illegally detain or kill before Trump or the United States government of the day, the oligarchy, would do anything. It's a good question to ask. Of course, on a similar note, coming from antimedia.com, really showing you why the BDS movement is important and what they're actually fighting against, and why someone like her, who has a lineage from Palestinians, has every right to do this kind of thing. This entitled, Israel's education minister wants, quote, shoot, kill to kill policy against Palestinian children. Now, this, of course, as it rings true with the reason I started with the member of parliament at the time, the Irish member of parliament, talking about what they were saying. Not just that this is, oh, well, these are terrorists, these are bad people. No, that they just simply do not like Palestinians. That they hate Palestinians. That they're willing to kill the families of Palestinians to stop them from breeding. This is the truth. And it's not that hard to stumble across, as long as you look anywhere outside of the mainstream propaganda bubble. Because it's true. And now we're seeing clearly that the Israel education minister wants shoot-to-kill policy against Palestinian children, while this American citizen's being detained for supporting a movement that calls these kind of things out, and actually asks for any kind of justice for the illegal actions they take. So Israel's education minister, his name is Naftali Bennett, he said yesterday that he would impose a, quote, shoot-to-kill policy in Gaza, including against Palestinian children. Bennett made the comment on Israel's army radio after he was asked what he would do differently if he were the defense minister, having all kinds of things to say. But when directly asked if he would instruct the Israeli army to adopt a shoot-to-kill policy against Palestinian children, he replied, quote, they are not children, they are terrorists. Let that set in. Any child protesting near the fence is a terrorist in their eyes. And many would likely go, yes, they shouldn't be there. They are terrorists. But we have to understand the ridiculous veil we're putting over this entire situation. People have a right to protest, do they not? And the idea that you can simply arbitrarily label every single child that happens to protest near the fence a terrorist shows you the propaganda of the entire thing. Now, last week, Bennett, who is also the leader of the religious Zionist Jewish Home Party, not a surprise, accused Lieberman of weakness for engaging in ceasefire talks in Gaza. Yes, God forbid we should talk about ceasefire or any kind of a peace movement, because that's weak to give these lesser humans any kind of leeway. Is what they're really saying there. The truth of this needs to be very apparent, that they don't care about what they were doing, why they're there. Any child that is anywhere in their vicinity is a terrorist, as they see it. As I've pointed out before, not a very shocking story probably to many of you. And in a very related story, the last one today for Israel, just again to show you the hypocrisy and the just disregard for human life, this coming from Mint Press News, in regard to the IDF, entitled, IDF awards Israeli soldiers for deadly crackdown on Gaza protests. Awards them. So the Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, Gadi Eisenkot, awarded the IDF's Gaza division with a certificate of appreciation for contributing to, quote, Israel's security by brutally suppressing protests ongoing since March in the Palestinian enclave. The controversial award was given, as were Bennett's previous statements about his desire to shoot and kill children in Gaza, even as the number of unarmed Gazan demonstrators wounded by the IDF since March 30th, according to figures from the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in the occupied Palestinian territories, has surpassed 22,000, while the numbers of those killed by the same IDF soldiers over that same time frame has reached now 205. Among the dead are 38 children. Of course, award the men for doing their best. Now, since Operation Protective Edge in 2014, the IDF's Gaza division has sustained a single fatality. Now understand, we're talking about men with sniper rifles from behind a bunker with an electrified fence, with their lives threatened by kids throwing rocks. And they're killed 38 children. Of course, they want this to be the case, right? Because they want a shoot-to-kill policy of children. Eisenkot added that the division had, quote, acted responsibly and professionally in a complex reality and deserved international recognition for its efforts. Though commonly described by the corporate media as clashes, the protests in Gaza involved heavily armed Israeli snipers firing into crowds of unarmed young Palestinians. Those killed by the IDF include journalists, as we pointed out many times, as they actually, as we point out before, aim for journalists so they can stop getting the information out and pass laws for they can no longer even film IDF members. It includes medics, as they intend and focus and try to aim for the medics trying to aid the people they just shot. Thank you, Smith and Wesson, for the super chat. And of course, simply children. As we pointed out many, many times, as this story of a child with his hands in the air being shot down. This is likely not new to any of you, most of you, I should say, watching this show, because you've been paying attention to this stuff, because we've been putting it forward over and over. But IDF soldiers are under orders to shoot protesters who get too close to the border fence. Remember, as we said, even if that means children. And we pointed this out before. The brutal nature of the repression led Israel's defense minister, Avigdor Lieberman, to assert that there in fact were no innocent people in Gaza at all, despite the strip being home to 1 million adolescents and children. All terrorists, as they see it. And Israel Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked claimed that the only way for the Gaza border to be completely quiet, which is what they want, obviously, would be for Israel to conquer the Strip. To conquer the Strip. The only way it could be quiet down where they want it, just where they stop getting so much international attention for the murder we're committing, is if we simply aggressively occupy it. Now, the dire situation in Gaza is widely believed to be nearing a dangerous climax, with the vast majority of Gazan drinking water being non-potable, undrinkable, disease-ridden, and the UN warning that the entire Strip will be uninhabitable in less than 2 years. The increasingly troubling humanitarian situation in Gaza is largely the result of Israel's blockade of the enclave, now in its 11th year. Of course, very similar to what we're seeing in Yemen today. Of course, creating the blockade, which creates the problem, then turning around and blaming the problem on them. Saying, look at how terrible these people live. We need to go do something militarily to help them. Even though they're the ones that have created the circumstance, which is why they live so terribly. Not allowing them electricity, shutting off their water, murdering people with no regard, displacing people over and over, and God, look at how terrible these Gazans are with their disgusting situation. Why don't we militarily invade their territory so they can be better suited? This is what they want you to believe. And as we showed in the beginning, they don't care about these people. They think they are less than, and they will do anything to exterminate them. Very important to see this. Now, in February, Eisenkot stated that another Israeli invasion of Gaza was likely to occur this year. Eisenkot ironically framed the imminent invasion, as I said, as a way to, quote, prevent a humanitarian collapse in Gaza that they created, suggesting that military action against Gazan civilians and infrastructure would somehow improve the daily lives of the Strip's inhabitants. They really want you to think this. They're the good guys. We're just trying to help these people that we're murdering. Really need to set in for us and spread this information. These are the allies the U.S. supports. And speaking of allies, as if this story has somehow been forgotten, because remember, Saudi Arabia is doing their best to stop killing so many people. Oh, and they're going to be investigating themselves because that's what they do. But things carry on. New tragedy in Yemen as Saudi airstrike kills family of beekeepers on their own farm. The point being is this is not stopping. They have no intention of stopping. As we've shown, Mohammed bin Salman openly says he's going to continue targeting children so they shiver when they hear the name Saudi Arabia. But that's not what the Western media would have you believe, or Pompeo would have you believe, or Mattis would have you believe. They want you to think that they're doing their best to fight off these rebels that are aiming rockets at the Saudi locations, while they're bombing civilians and buses and children and hospitals and funerals. Those dangerous funerals. The lies they tell you are quite staggering. So on October 8th, a family of beekeepers was killed when the U.S.-backed Saudi coalition targeted their family bee farm with multiple airstrikes on Monday in a residential district of Hodeidah. Local witnesses told Mint Press News that airstrikes targeted Ayesh Clip, that's the gentleman's name, his bee farm at Deir Essa in the Bajel district of southern Hodeidah, killing Ayesh and 4 of his family members. The attack also destroyed the farm completely, which was the family's sole source of income in a country gripped by famine and a devastating humanitarian crisis. Now, also take notice of the fact that local witnesses on the ground told Mint Press News what we're talking about here. Not some anonymous U.S. official quoted by CNN or Fox News says that they were bombing terrorists. No, local witnesses from the ground have told them directly what's happening. Important thing to realize there, the contradiction, or rather the contrast to what the mainstream media will tell you based on some official who's lied 1,000 times in their career. Now, in a separate attack on another civilian target, 3 people were killed and a 4th was critically injured when a Saudi warship targeted a market in Al-Duarimi, the city in the same province. Targeted a market full of civilians. 3 civilian workers were also killed and 4 others injured when Saudi coalition airstrikes hit a stone factory in Sanhan district south of Yemen's capital in the city of Sana'a. We've pointed out more times than I can count the direct targeting of civilian infrastructure. And they continue to try to tell you that, no, these are accidents, just mere mistakes, as the United States points on a map and Saudi airstrikes carry them out. Mere mistakes. We thought they were terrorists. Oops, we bombed another market, another bus full of children. Over and over. Even while they're stressing their innocence at the United Nations, they bomb a bus full of children. The same moment, the same day, within hours. And the strike on the bee farm was no accident or error in targeting, as they want you to think, as many more were actually killed while rushing in to save lives and were hit by another airstrike, a subsequent airstrike, in what we've told you before is known as a double tap airstrike. The point being to kill the medic personnel, to kill the average people that rush in to help those that they just shot. This is their policy. This is a matter of policy for the U.S.-backed Saudi coalition. And yet another show of the true sinister nature of this U.S.-backed Saudi coalition and their heartless tactics. The attack on this bee farm comes as families of victims were marking the 2nd anniversary of a coalition strike that hit a funeral hall with about 1,000 mourners inside in Yemen's capital on October 8th, 2016. 144 funeral goers were killed in the attack and 600 were wounded. And as they're mourning this day of loss, as they bombed a funeral, killing hundreds, they bomb them again. This is what they're trying to accomplish. This is not an accident. This is not a whoops, slip of the button, wrong target, our mistake. We're doing our best to stop killing so many. This is their targeted assassination of civilians and their infrastructure. We should be seeing this by now. But it's not going to stop until we continue to push this out there. Now, despite Saudis admitting to this atrocity in 2016, as we've seen them do recently with hollow promises of seeking justice, the families of the victims are still waiting to this day for that justice. As Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have used their considerable influence to stave off accountability for that attack, and everyone since. As we just reported that the UN itself spoke out that they were doing just that in the last so many weeks. In getting in the way of the report so they cannot show what they're actually doing. This is verifiable information. But as they sit there and promise you that they're going to find justice for the kids that were killed in that bus and do everything they can to make sure it doesn't happen, ask these people how that worked out for them all these years later, as their families died mourning other people that were killed by these coalition actions. And now they bomb them again while they're mourning on the second round. This is the justice that they seek. Now it says, quote, "It is good that there are investigators from the UN, but we know that the coalition will prevent them from reaching the facts." This according to Nasir al-Rasuhan, who lost many members of his family and friends in this attack. 2 years have passed, he says, and we are still waiting for accountability. How many times can this happen before we recognize that we're being lied to? That either the United States is willfully ignoring the reality of their allies, or they're aware it's happening. Either way, they're continuing to accurately target civilians. But they're doing their best to minimize the amount of people they kill as they target civilians and their infrastructure. Come on. Moving on to the next story coming from ZeroHedge.com. This one entitled, U.S. Intel Knew of Saudi Plan to Abduct Missing Journalist. Turkey releases footage of the hit team. Of course, perfect follow-up for Saudi Arabia, as they knew the U.S. was aware they were going to kidnap, chop up, and ship away a journalist that worked for the Washington Post and did nothing. Important thing to realize here, and as this ends, there's even a more important point in regard to the last story. So in this, of course, as they start, Washington knew and apparently did nothing. This according to Bloomberg, based on a Washington Post report. It says, quote, U.S. intelligence services intercepted communications of Saudi officials discussing a plan to capture Saudi journalist and government critic Jamal Khashoggi, who we reported on recently, whose disappearance in Turkey last week threatens to damage the warm ties between the kingdom and Washington. Warm indeed. The Saudis were discussing a plan to lure Khashoggi back to the kingdom. The Washington Post reported this, citing a familiar person with the communications which were intercepted before he vanished. Khashoggi, a columnist for the newspaper, was last seen entering the Saudi consulate on Istanbul on October 2nd and is feared to be detained or dead. Of course, for obvious reasons, the Post report that Bloomberg is reporting on buried the lead, as the story is headlined by them simply, Saudis are said to have lain in wait for Jamal Khashoggi. Not that the U.S. knew, as their own report shows. Now, what's clear to recognize here, as we should be distrustful of Bloomberg and Washington Post, is that knowing that this is a Washington Post writer or columnist, and if it was eventually, and it will likely be found out one way or the other, that they were aware of this, the U.S., and they didn't report on it as the Washington Post, it just added yet another tarnish to their already crumbling record as any kind of a credible organization. I mean, they're already completely lost as far as I see it, but there are still people who trust in these kind of organizations. But so clearly they're trying to report this as moderately as possible. Oh, the Saudis were laying in wait for him. Don't read anything else. Just read the title. Don't recognize that the U.S. was well aware they were doing this and allowed it to happen. No, don't pay attention to that. Ask yourselves why they titled it like that. This is them trying to get away with doing the least amount they can to expose the fact that one of their own journalists was murdered by a U.S. ally. It's a despicable act by the Washington Post to try to bury that very point. But this story confirms U.S. intelligence had clear evidence that the Saudi journalist and the Washington Post columnist was about to be kidnapped and possibly worse. The Washington Post story includes the following, quote, before Khashoggi's disappearance, U.S. intelligence intercepted communications of Saudi officials discussing a plan to capture him. And yet they titled it completely oblivious of that point. The Turkish newspaper Sabah has released what are reported to be names and photographs of the 15 Saudis who are suspected to be involved in the disappearance of the Saudi journalist. As they reported before, they apparently flew in and then left with bags under diplomatic immunity and nobody could look. Now, sources close to the investigation actually believe the Saudi journalist and the Washington Post columnist was brutally tortured, killed, and cut into pieces, as that's a direct quote, and his body removed from the consulate. Of course, in these secret diplomatic protected bags that they hushed away and nobody was allowed to look at. While this amount of evidence piling on, which is indeed a lot of evidence, Saudi officials who have consistently denied any involvement in the journalist's disappearance will find it quite a bit harder to stonewall this any further, but they will likely try, as Saudi Arabia is well known for their complete disregard for any kind of accountability. Sounds familiar, like one of their other two allies. On Monday, President Trump himself had for the first time addressed the Khashoggi disappearance, saying, quote, "I am concerned about that. I don't like hearing about it, and hopefully that will sort itself out." Casually maybe it'll just do something and I won't. That's, just so easily dismissing something like that, which is quite profound. Adding to Trump's softball, "it will sort itself out" statement, the State Department addressed the Khashoggi issue with only a few more words, as it essentially called on Saudi Arabia, of course, the presumed murderers, to investigate themselves. As WikiLeaks aptly noted, the statement reads, quote, "We call on the government of Saudi Arabia to support a thorough investigation of Mr. Khashoggi's disappearance and to be transparent about the result of that investigation. We'll wait patiently for that." Do you see where this is going? Yet again. I mean, just in this last 15 minutes, dating back from 2016 of the funeral bomb killing hundreds of people to this moment today. And even the Kirby State Department briefing where Matt Lee asked, which I've shown you in the past, dating all the way back to 2016, asked him about the funeral bombing, saying, "Are you going to do anything?" "Oh, well, we're going to make sure that they do their investigation and that we follow up." Well, they're still waiting for that. Do you see how this works? They point to something and say, "We're going to get to the bottom of this," and then everybody gets misdirected with another Kavanaugh hearing or another QAnon or any number of things they put in front of you to stop paying attention, as they do nothing. As they kidnap and murder a Washington Post columnist and get nothing. I mean, just really need to begin to recognize what's really happening here today. The U.S. oligarchy has gone rogue. They do not care about what we think as Americans, and they're partnered with the two worst human rights violators in the world. That's not arguably. That's demonstratably. But they'll tell you otherwise if you watch the mainstream media. But hopefully, you're beginning to pay attention. And actually, interestingly enough, it seems some congressmen are as well. This is one that likely has been speaking out to some degree. But I mean, we saw Tulsi Gabbard speak out as well. People are beginning to say something. Whether that's to progress their careers or not is up to you to decide. But it shows you that the tide turned to some degree. This coming from Senator Rand Paul. Saudi Arabia, the largest state sponsor of jihadism, that's absolutely true. But whether that's at the behest of Israel and the United States is something you should dig into for yourself. Time to quit arming radical Islam. Absolutely, Senator Rand Paul. Hopefully the next time a vote comes around, we'll see you vote the right way. But I don't think that even matters, personally. I think that the what happens in Congress is far beyond anything we can be a part of. This is the way the system has been designed over the years. The faux democracy, the faux republic, faux constitutional republic, whatever you want to call it, it's faux. It is not what we think it is. And these things will continue, as we saw Trump disregard the NDAA to say, look, you know what? I don't care what you guys all agreed on with your little Congress. No, I'm just going to write this executive order that says I don't have to do what you say about Yemen because they don't care. Well, let's see what happens with Khashoggi. Hopefully something, likely nothing. Important to recognize that. The next story coming from ZeroHedge.com. This one entitled Congressional Syria Study Group to provide options for transition to post-Assad Syria. There's a lot to take in there. But there's an important point to take away from this that I felt was incredibly profound, almost in my eyes, the biggest admission of the day. This is a very big thing for them to put forward, but this flew drastically under the radar. I almost made up a new word there. Drastically under the radar. And that's interesting to realize with such a big statement, but you'll see why. Because it was done without anybody paying attention. So since entering the office, President Trump's long-term policy on Syria has seemed to remain a mystery, at times even to him, I would say. At least right now, 2,000 U.S. troops are still occupying parts of Syria's east. And of course, likely many more that go unacknowledged or are simply military contractors, and of course not subject to inclusion in such arbitrary counts of U.S. military personnel. Of course, despite the fact that oftentimes they outnumber the amount of actual military on the ground and are being directed nonetheless by the Pentagon, but I digress. But it appears today that the White House's Syria policy is still uncertain to top advisors and even to Trump himself, as we recently touched on, dancing back and forth between it's about Iran, no, it's about Assad, no, it's about ISIS. I mean, it's all over the place. All three. So last Friday, in a vastly underreported but hugely important move. Trump authorized the creation of a congressional study or Syria study group to examine U.S. strategy on Syria. Of course, as I said, as usual in U.S. politics, the creation of this 12-member Syria study group was tucked inside an unrelated bill that Trump just signed into law. The reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration, in fact. The legislation allows Republicans and Democrats to appoint experts to the panel, which is mandated to hand a final report to Congress in 6 months. Sounds slightly innocuous to some people. Yeah, they're just organizing a group to talk about Syria, but there's more than that. It's what it's all about, which I think they're trying to keep from people recognizing. Something that we're all beginning to kind of wrap our minds around today. And that's that they don't know what they're really doing there. Or rather, they've lost touch with what their lie is. Now, one of the lead senators pushing for the panel, Senator Jeanine Shaheen, accurately described in an almost comically ironic quote, stating, quote, "It will bring outside experts together to finally develop a U.S. strategy in Syria." To finally develop a U.S. strategy in Syria. Really think about what she's saying right there. Thank you, Alex B., for the super chat. As the author rightly notes in this article, quote, "Too much truth in one soundbite. The senator wants to finally develop a U.S. strategy in Syria. This after pursuing regime change there for years, arming fanatical jihadists, bombing government forces multiple times, and illegally stationing well over, I would say, 2,000 troops in a sovereign UN member state." I mean, really think about what they're saying there. Implying clearly that they don't have a strategy, or rather they don't even know what their aim is anymore. This well after, let's just kill 1 million people in Syria, occupy the location, arm jihadists, and just do whatever we feel like, and then it's clear that they don't even know what their real aim was. I mean, I think the point is they know what that aim was. They don't want us to know what that aim was. Simple hegemony, invasion, occupation, control. But they can't tell us that. And so now they're talking about finally developing a strategy. I mean, I found this to be quite profound. The Trump administration has in recent months signaled that its priority in Syria will be curtailing Iranian influence and presence in the region, as we pointed out. This after the original justification for the Pentagon's presence, the defeat of the Islamic State, becomes now a harder and harder fiction to maintain, as the terror group has long been driven underground and is now insignificant, and, point of fact, has roundly been exposed on this show in large as simply a proxy group of the U.S. and its allies used to create the justification needed to invade foreign nations, to achieve its political goals and pressure others into policies that benefit U.S. hegemony. Demonstrably so. And clearly they're losing control of the narrative. As Caitlin always points out, is paramount to what they're doing today. And notably, the final report will assess the various roles of both Iran, Russia, and other groups like Hezbollah in the conflict, and will provide, quote, options for gradual political transition to a post-Assad Syria, according to the legislation. That's on the nose there when you realize they're looking for a post-Assad Syria. Despite all their claims about even being focused on Iran right this moment, in their own legislation it finishes saying, and we'll focus on when Assad's gone because that's just gonna happen, right? That's what we're there for. But don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Also as always, it's just humorous to me how even amongst themselves they seem to be grasping at straws when it comes to what they're really trying to say in Syria. It's time, Washington, to just step up and say, look, we're just trying to overthrow countries. At least then it would be honest, and we can go forward from there. But I doubt that will happen. Moving on to the next story coming from Waking Times, a little bit of domestic policy for you. And this story struck me as something very important to cover, not necessarily new, to many of you likely not new at all, but something that it's important to put together for people who have not made this connection. This entitled, 5G network uses same EMF waves as Pentagon crowd control system. That doesn't sound ominous. Yes, those little 5G panels that will be all over your neighborhood will apparently be the same waves they use to disable people. I wonder how that could go wrong. So the global rollout of 5G is well underway, and we soon may see new small cell towers near all schools, every residential street, dispersed throughout the natural environment, and pretty much everywhere. As he pointed out in a past show, apparently the wave is stronger but shorter. So they need many, many, many more small towers everywhere. Seems to suit their purpose. But the safety of this technology is in serious question. Not just because we pointed out before about cancer risks and any number of things that are very real things to be concerned about. And there is clearly a raging battle to stop what is the taxpayer-funded implementation of 5G, which in and of itself I take issue with. We didn't vote on this. Why is the taxpayers' money paying for something that is going to benefit the large companies? Why don't they pay for this? If they'd like to, I mean, it's a complicated measure when it comes to implementing this kind of mass idea. But it's something we should definitely vote on. Thank you, Jason A., for the super chat. I appreciate your support, my friend. The reality of this, though, is much bigger than just cancer and many other things. And now, among the many potential problems with exposure to 5G radio waves are apparently issues with the skin, which is interesting, as the article points out, when you consider that this technology is already being used in the military for crowd control purposes. Quoted from Collective Evolution, quote, "This kind of technology, which is in many of our homes, actually interacts with human skin and eyes," which in and of itself is kind of an alarming thought. The shocking finding was made public via Israeli research studies that were presented at an international conference on the subject last year. Below you can find a lecture from Dr. Ben Isaiah of the Department of Physics at Hebrew University. He goes through how human sweat ducts act like a number of heliac antennas when exposed to these wavelengths that are put out by the devices that employ 5G technology. I mean, really think about that when we're talking about these everywhere, essentially. Emitting these kind of waves, and this directly, if used properly, can incapacitate you. Now, of course, the U.S. military developed a non-lethal crowd control weapon. This is a system called the Active Denial System, which I believe I touched on a research and review, which is very, very, it's interesting. But it's alarming in this context in regard to 5G. Now, it uses radio frequency millimeter waves in the 95 gigahertz range to penetrate the top 1/64th of an inch layer of skin on the targeted individual, instantly producing an intolerable heating sensation that causes them to flee, and if high enough, is incapacitating. So really take a moment and think about this. Now, of course, this is wild conspiracy theory, but the simple possibility that these towers could be used in this regard should be something we should consider. Is there not possible that it could fall into the wrong hands, the control of them? I mean, this is all the cancer and all the mind manipulation concepts aside. This is something that could be used for nationwide crowd control. And that is something that will keep me up at night as it goes through without us being involved. And as we just talked about the fact that the government is skipping right over the local communities and their voting capability, just disregarding the local government, saying, no, you don't get to be involved in this decision. We're doing it anyway. And that should scare us. Now, after all these terrible things, which there is always a lot of negativity to talk about today, but that does not mean that it's all there is to talk about, or even in fact that it's the majority. That's something that we can have a hard time wrapping our minds around. And I want to finish with a story today from The Organic Prepper written by Daisy Luther. Even parts in this article itself that I don't necessarily agree with, but the overarching premise of her article I felt was very important to finish with today. Entitled, "Most of Us Are Not Participating in the Hysterical Rage You See in the News." And it's interesting to think that I've been talking about this for a while now. The reality that we may actually be the majority, the silent majority, as it were, and the false majority is what they put out there on the news. These 0.01% of elitists on the coastlines who are forcing their opinions as the mass narrative, as the dominant narrative, telling us what we need to be thinking, and if we think otherwise, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, you're an outsider, you're an Assad apologist, you're an anti-American Russian bot. But the reality may be quite different. Now, the larger idea aside, the point that she's making in this article is simply that the rage, the political discourse of the day that we see as the norm in CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, what they're forcing on us as this aggressive political divide, this hatred, this vitriol, because you voted for somebody else, is not everybody. And in fact, it's not most of us. And that's something we really need to take away today, to end this show on a positive note. She starts out by saying, if you were to read about the United States of America from someplace else, which is important to think about too, how other countries perceive us through that media lens, which most of them likely do. She says you'd probably think it was a nation full of people who are gearing up to go to war. Anyone would think the same thing from what they see in the media, and I agree with that. You would see hysterical rage fueling terrible acts. You would see the intense hatred between people who belong to different political parties. You'd believe this is nationwide, as they rightly want us to believe. It isn't like this in everyday America, she says. The media is painting an ugly picture and putting that picture everywhere. So it seems like this is our reality. It's not. Rage is not the reality for most of us. And as many of you may immediately think of an experience, oh, well, I was surrounded by all these people who did this or these things, that happens. There are pockets out there today. But what's important to recognize is that's not everybody. As I always say, the most ignorant among us scream the loudest. And that doesn't mean just because they all together and attack you for one reason or another, that does not necessarily mean that that's the way it is out there. Understand the real control, as many of you likely do watching this show, of the propaganda, of the control mechanisms they have out there, the social engineering from school to today. Where we're at in our lives, they have manipulated your perception and have told you where to look and how. And within that, they're able to control what we perceive as the majority. And that's a powerful thing. Now, of course, in contrast, she goes on to list a number of heartwarming, selfless acts in times of struggle, which I could list hundreds of them, but I'll list a couple she wrote. She said there's a Cajun Navy, which formed after a bunch of guys who fished and hunt, banded together, and then went and rescued people who needed rescuing. There are the people in Hawaii who saw that the government wasn't doing anything to help people displaced by a volcano, so they stepped in and built a tiny house community for their homeless neighbors. There was a guy in Puerto Rico who bought a utility truck with his neighbors and restored power to their neighborhood himself. And of course, how practically the entire internet stepped in to support a woman who got in trouble for rescuing abandoned dogs and cats after Hurricane Florence. There's a lot of good out there, even if it may not seem like it. Because, of course, they don't want you seeing it. This is why they try to stop us from helping each other, illegalizing kindness and charity in every way they can, locking up a woman for saving dogs, trying to arrest people for building tiny homes without permits that help the homeless. Oh, you can't feed those homeless people. You can't sell that lemonade. No, you can't. You need our permission to do anything. They don't want us helping each other, and there's a reason for that. They want their perception to dominate. And that's very important to take away, that there are many people out there trying to do what's right. Of course, she ends as saying they, the politicians, the media, the rich people pulling the strings, and industries like big tech and big farm, want us at each other's throats. As I often say, it supports them. It puts money in their pockets and power in their hands. Divided we fall, and these are the people who want that to happen. Every single one of us is being manipulated at any given moment. We're being turned against one another. We're being ripped apart for the benefit of those who love power. It doesn't have to be like this. We are better than this. And damn it if I agree with you, Daisy. I appreciate you writing that. And it's important that we recognize that there's a lot of good out there. And a lot of people doing good and fighting for good and trying to expose the evil. So don't lose sight of that, as hard as that may be. People like us, people like you, there's a lot of us out there, and it's time we realize that it's possible, at least, that we may be the majority. Thank you for tuning in today. I will see you tomorrow, and as always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Now, I know that standards have slipped over the last few years in Washington, but for a lawyer, you're remarkably cavalier with any idea of justice.